Can you hear me? They're online in the virtual world? Cool. Do you wanna switch camera, or is that good? You good? Well, I wanted to start out. My name is Lauert. I'm one of the programmers for the festival. I wanted to start out with, of course, thank you all for sharing your, generous work with us here. Um, there's a bunch of people here. None of the filmmakers in this program are here physically, so we're very pleased that you could also join us, virtually. Um, so let's give a round of applause for our filmmakers in the room. Um, I wanted um, to have you introduce yourself maybe a little bit, just so we know who made what work, and um, maybe you say your name and say the film that you made. But you're also welcome to say a couple words about your film if this is now an opportune moment to sort of, if there's something that's really burning. Um, so, Alex, let's start with you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for attending the screening and inviting the film to be part of the lineup this year. Alex, I'm a filmmaker based in Scotland, and I made Notes from Brick House. I have nothing burning to say about it, but I'd love to be part of any questions and a discussion.
Thank you, Alex. We have a little bit of a delay on the sound here, so we're just figuring that out.
Oh, did you hear me okay? Or
We heard you okay. Yes.
okay.
Do you need this one on the monitor? Hello. Yes. Okay, sorry for that little interjection here. I think we're not doubled at this current juncture. There's one person at a time. Kwai, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, can you hear me clearly?
We do. We hear you very clearly
Cool.
and nicely. Yeah.
Cool. So, thank you so much. My name is Kwei. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. Originally from China, and I'm doing my master's in documentary film. At the moment at UCT. I made the film Talking to Family.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Yamili, am I saying that right?
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes, Hamigi. First of all, thank you so much for for having Bajol Sol being programmed in this year's festival. I'm currently based out of Mexico City, in Mexico, and yeah, I made Bajol Sol.
Okay. Then, Nietzsche, am I saying that correctly?
Yes, hello. I'm Nitya Ramlogan Lopez. I made the film Criatura, which is the animated documentary. And yeah, it's a film that I made in school during my studies in the UK. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing the film alongside all the other ones in the program, which were great, great fit together, I thought. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, we look forward to talking about it all. Thank you so much. And I guess I have prepared a few things, but mostly I kind of wanted to set us up in a way with some sort of commonalities that I see in the work. But since you are not in the screening space, your experience is, of course, different than the sort of trajectory of a film program. So because words are difficult, I've typed them up and then I will read them. So political fracture and other kinds of uncertainty amplify the shadows of history and continue to cause trauma in the lives of regular humans. In the various displaced experience, whether voluntary or forced, there is a continuing conflict between longing for the past, the life that was left behind, and the life in the new place into the future. The life of the displaced is haunted by phantoms of the past, the people and places left behind and their memories. The immigrant is also haunted by a kind of pervasive ghostliness of the everyday, of being simultaneously seen and not seen, being physically present in a society, yet legally, socially, and bureaucratically rendered invisible or less than. That's not so much, that's just a few more words. And in many instances, also hyper surveilled and stripped of a full human narrative, never allowed to belong. This kind of ghostliness is something that I see as a common thread throughout your films, and they of course figure in various ways. It could be sort of like in Creatura, the ghost of a father, or the ghost of a father figure, at least that's how I'm reading it. Or it could be the sort of the inhumane double treatment of being simultaneously seen and not seen within a society, right? Both being something that we want to hide away, or something that is, I don't know, considered in some way. I don't want to, yeah, let's not get into that. Then there's secondly thinking a little bit of Kwai's film, sort of like this this kind of ghostly traffic of communicating through virtual media, which I see as an interesting, which we're doing now, of course. There's like a ghostly movement between homeland and the new home. So I wonder, would it be possible for you to talk a little bit about your experience navigating these kind of in-between spaces, both as filmmakers, but also in the way that you see it with the people that you're working with? And whoever wants to chime in can chime in. And of course, this is both in a sort of very pragmatic way. How do you navigate bureaucratic systems? But how do you also do it emotionally? Emilie, you're nodding. What are you thinking?
Me.
Anybody?
It's a difficult question. But my experience, I think for me, I've been studying overseas. This is my 7th year now. I left China when I was 19 after high school. I think I've growing up there, I've kind of like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I only discovered myself while I was not in China, if that makes sense. So I've I've been learning so much while I'm not in China about China. So and about my family. So I think there's a distance between yourself and who you want to be, and the distance is what's the median that I'm using to convey to translate my emotions. I think working with the people, I mean, first of all, my family still don't know what I'm doing as a filmmaker, and they will never understand, I guess. But I think that's also the beauty of that. Um, um, but yeah, I think it's a strange feeling that you're home but you're not home sometimes. I guess that's it for me.
Right. And Yamili, in your work, we're kind of dealing a little bit with, of course we're dealing with many things, but we're dealing a little bit with sort of the generational aspect of sort of returning to a homeland, and your grandmother, I believe it is, returning, but also you're returning to a place. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that kind of ghostliness or this feeling of a space. What is it
Yeah,
like to return in that way?
yeah, and like I said in the voiceover of the film, it's always strange to return because um, my name actually comes from my grandma's hometown, Santiago Jamiltepec, on the coast, a bit farther away from Puerto Escondido. But it's so strange going back because I this summer I spent with my grandma in the coast, and I was like, "Do you regret leaving?" Um, and she was like, "You know what? I do. I do regret leaving, but I'm glad that I can come back." And I think that sense of coming back and then bringing my mom and my uncles and aunts back to the coast, and then her grandchildren back to the coast every year. I think it's an important. It was important for her, for us to know our roots, which I think is really beautiful. And I think the ghostly sense in that is, well, returning to our hometown, returning to our home state, our coast, and seeing it different every single time that we go back, due to societal effects like tourism. Um, as we saw in my film, I used Google Maps to kind of see how the place has changed within the span of like 10 years. And it is really crazy to think about like how the development of tourism has impacted really a fishing town of Puerto Escondido, because that's what it was before it was developed for tourism. And I think the memories of my grandmother going there and my mom going there, my family going there, me going there when I was younger, to then seeing what it has become now, I think that like leaves, it's like a ghost that follows you, because you'll know that it's never going to be that, because it's made and developed for someone else. And I think for me, that's how I feel about the coast in Oaxaca right now.
Thank you so much. Nietzsche, what are your thoughts on this kind of thing? And you can also continue to elaborate on your film, but because that's of course it's a docu-fiction, so that it's doing many different things at once.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the question. And it's a very big theme, the kind of as you described it, like ghostly character of like aspects of identity, or the gaps kind of in belonging between where you're from, where you are, and what you perceive either one of those even to be. I think this is for me like a big motivating question in the film, for my place as a filmmaker. I think as I'm kind of a first generation in my family to be born in the US, so there's a whole part. And also I come from a kind of a mixed background with my mom is from Mexico, my dad is from Trinidad and Tobago. So there's like quite a bit of identities in the mix there. And I think just that experience of having lived your whole life in one place and having a connection to the other place is a huge gap. And so the kind of other place is really something that can only be imagined or remembered, and it's never really the way that maybe you remember it, or it's your memory is frozen in a way. And that's the kind of that's the framework that I'm approaching the film as a filmmaker. And I know that the Lola, the main protagonist of the film, and even the other students who I kind of co-created the story with while I was in London, have a very different experience of belonging and immigration and memory and home as they moved to London from, in Lola's case, from Mexico just a few years before as a child. But I think that the interesting connection I felt to Lola and to the story as a coming of age story as well is that like this, the forming of a sense of who you are and how turbulent and kind of universal in a way that is at adolescence and preteen age, and is something that is kind of an added layer to this already kind of confused memory of home. And so I think, and that sometimes, you know, that association to a home can be very tangible, as in the case of Lola, where her father remained in Mexico even as she moved to London. But it can also be more intangible in things like memories about a place or feelings that or who you perceived yourself to be there versus in the new place. And so I thought that working from a fictional narrative would, and maybe it's helpful to say a little bit about the process, but I thought that a docufiction is a great kind of way to explore that emotional side and the complexity of the emotions, apart from the fact of having moved somewhere and calling two places a home. So in the case of the students I worked with, we did kind of some improvisation workshops and did like comic strip creation based on fictional premises from short stories that already existed. We worked with one story, magical realism short story about a drowned giant that appears on the shore of a town and shocks everyone in the town, and all the villagers of that fishing town have their own ideas of in a way that they project onto that body, that mass that has appeared in their town, as to who it is, how it arrived, the stories, the fears, the aspirations, and kind of imagination that they have around something new and different. And so we used this premise to kind of create comic strips that the students drew their own kind of plot around, and from these visual inputs and also the improvised like narration of it, we arrived at a story that which is a story of a sea creature that is found on a beach by a teenage girl and taken care of, or she takes a liking to the creature and is reminded of aspects of her home, and this was reflected in a lot of the kind of more group discussion, intimate and personal discussions about personal experiences and stories. That kind of, I felt there was a strong parallel in a way with the fictional story, and how carrying something so huge as a home and the memory of that home, and also the people, the relationships is like such a huge thing you take with you, and it's also a complicated thing to figure out how it fits into your new life, and there's quite mixed feelings around it. And I thought that this device actually went a pretty far way when layered with the voice, Lola's voice, and audio material of her story. I thought it paired well to kind of get at that emotional complexity. So I've said enough, but thank you very much. for the
Thank you so
question.
much. Thank you so much. And I guess I'm sort of noticing, Alex, you're probably the only one who's not working sort of so closely. Maybe not, because Nietzsche is not working with her own personal work, but I know Kwai and Jamili is working with their own experiences. Do you mind talking a little bit about maybe some of those experiences of working with asylum seekers in terms of you can stay with the ghostly, you don't have to, but thinking about some of the emotional and practical kind of ghostly constraints or such.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the theme of ghostliness that you're using to tie the films together without having seen them. It's a great theme to respond to. Can you hear me okay now? Is it more?
We hear you all right. Yeah,
Great.
you're not double.
Yeah, so I was trying to think about ghostliness in relation to my film, and I mean, there is a sense of anonymity with the people whose testimony is revoiced. You know, the people who are held in immigration detention, not all of them necessarily asylum seekers, but who have been placed there out of their control by the state in a process which is not a criminal act in the UK. It's an administrative one and can go on indefinitely. And in the film, the stories, the experiences these people share are obviously revoiced by a kind of cross section or an array of people that I met whilst I was filming the more historic internal borders in the country. And there's a sense of maybe anonymity in those testimonies because they've been revoiced. And I think maybe the ghostliness kind of comes into it through that, which is really, you know, an act of protection for the people who have been sharing these stories, whose cases might still be ongoing, or you know, who might not want it to come back and re-enter their lives in whatever way that it could. So that's yeah, kind of one take on it, one perspective on it. When I was started thinking about my family live on an internal border in the UK between England and Wales. It's, you know, separate countries, but within the same nation. I guess similar to state boundaries in the US, but with much longer histories and probably slightly more ingrained cultural differences. And I became interested through that kind of family connection in the different functionings and devolved powers that each nation had. But as I was working on, you know, filming these landscapes in these very rural places in between in the UK, you know, there was also this increasingly toxic rhetoric in the news media, these over sensationalized images of people trying to enter the country on small boats and by other means. And I realized that you can't, or at least for me, ethically, it didn't sit comfortably to make a film about borders of any kind without also addressing the kind of harm that they can cause people. And around that time as well, in 2023, there was a public inquiry published into the conditions in Brook House, which is one of the larger detention centres near Gatwick Airport on the outskirts of London. And yeah, so on kind of reading that and becoming more aware of the treatment of people, some of whom are seeking asylum in the country, that politicized my outlook and approach to the film. And I wanted to find a way to involve people who have been kind of kept out and who have been caught up in this kind of militarized border practice without exploiting or extracting their stories. And so, yeah, trying to revoice them and using them as a tool to confront people's viewpoints who I'd been talking to and meeting while filming anyway, felt like a kind of generative form to work with. And really what I was looking to do with the film is to kind of highlight the disconnect between personal empathy that people across the UK will experience or feel when they hear these stories and when they're forced to read them out, and then their wider views on immigration as a whole, which are often xenophobic and, unfortunately, as you hear in the film, sometimes downright racist. So it was that disconnect which seemed to be at the heart of so many issues with the treatment of people, which I was trying to point to in the structure and the approach of the film. the ghostliness in some ways, I guess.
Well, I guess also the landscapes are also in themselves ghostly in terms of thinking about the history of empire in that way, and the lives that were lived there, and the sort of expansion of the empire, right? And just the massive history of those landscapes. I feel like we see those things in the images, or at least feel them in the images.
Oh, good. Yes, thank you. I mean, I was very consciously looking for traces of borders and trying to challenge this idea of a border as a very linear, fixed line on a map, but rather to present it as a sort of grey area, which, you know, has its own porousness. You know, you're often not really aware of where the exact boundary is if you visit in person. And so I'm glad that you found that in some of the images as well.
Thank you. I think we're going to open it up to questions in the audience. Got a question up there. They need a mic. We need a mic runner. Kurt is coming with a mic.
Hello, thank you so much for sharing your work with us today. Hi everyone, I'm Anahid. I'll be screening at 4 p.m. It's an honor to be here with all of you. And I just wanted to say how this was such a powerful way to kick off the day, the screenings for today. So thank you all for collectively setting the right tone. Alex, I just wanted to observe also, without really asking a question, how empty all of the places that you filmed were, and the voiceover being about how there isn't space for more people formed a really ghostly, chilling contrast. So thank you for that. And I related to all of the films, so just to keep it short, my main question is to Nithya about the first film we saw. I just wanted to know more about the production process of the animation. Are we looking at transparencies layered on top of each other? Give us a little bit of a window into how you made that. It looked so cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words about the look of it. Yeah, the animation. So what I was describing earlier was kind of part of my story development, which involved a lot of collaboration with a group of students I was working with. But as far as the animation production itself, that was mostly done by me and a team of other student and professional animators. So we were working with on something called a multiplane, which is a type of pretty old school workstation that has a camera, a down shooting camera, and some shelves with glass planes on them. And then the style of animation is called cutout animation, which is a form of stop motion. So we made two-dimensional puppets for most of the characters, which were painted onto acetate, which is a transparent cell, and with some joints, and there was also some just painting on glass, frame by frame. So those were the two primary methods used, and because it was layers of glass and the film on which the characters were painted was transparent, that allowed this kind of layering effect, and it was lit from underneath. So yeah, that's a bit that's kind of the production of it. So from once the animation production started, and storyboarding, as I said, was done in consultation and together with Lola, as well as a team, as it was a film made in a school setting. In my own education, also worked with a team of like an editor, and received feedback on the story from my institution. But yeah, the animation production happened that way. And then there's bits that had collaged photographs. So those were from Lola's personal archive of her time, childhood in Mexico, as well as mostly that end of the place where she grew up in Chiapas. So that was this animation technique we used.
Thank you. Any other questions in the audience? Okay, I have some questions. Oh, there's one right there. Raise your hand. Okay.
Come up with something. Can you hear me? So my question is to Yamigi, and I was lucky enough to experience Puerto Escondido and San Agustinio during COVID when it was really empty. My family drove all the way there from here, and that's where we spent our COVID when it was empty. But I think it's such a universal experience to have all these pretty places be redeveloped for the ones who can afford it, and we see it happen over and over again. And I was wondering if you've thought of exploring that in any other regions that are outside of your hometown.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And actually, interestingly, during my research, because this film was made during my MFA at UC Santa Cruz, so it was like a lot of research going into also the filming. I think a lot of it developed, a lot of the unregulated touristic development started during COVID. Because of the lack of regulations that Mexico had around visitors and COVID, and just people, digital nomads wanting to escape. So it's actually really interesting that you bring that up. But I have been thinking about the connection between the Oaxacan coast and actually the coast in Gaza, which might sound like they're two different worlds, but I think the usage of land and the usage of coast and how it's imagined to be constructed for something else and for someone else other than the people that live there is something that I kind of noticed during my summer spent there in Puerto Escondido, and then seeing how the U.S. is talking about redeveloping the Gaza Strip for luxury condos and stuff, and how development packages are being sold already there. So so that's more like a research topic that I'd be interested in going into. But actually coming to Mexico City, where a lot of my family does live, I definitely been aware of changing places and changing neighborhoods and everything due to gentrification here. Last year when I moved here after my MFA with my family, I noticed a lot of, there was a lot of protests against gentrification and everything happening in the city. And it's just been really interesting to see that because where I grew up in New Jersey, in New Brunswick, I also did a project there about gentrification happening there. But so yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of changes happening everywhere around the world. And every spot that I've lived in, there's also been that, because in Santa Cruz, in California, it's a huge issue. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question totally, but yes, I'm definitely interested in seeing how this development for the other is spreading around the world.
Any other questions? Okay, then I have a question for Quay, and this sort of one thing I was struck about in your film was sort of the reoccurrence of these virtual elsewheres that sort of were existing all the time. Tablets, phones, and such, and it seemed like people, they were off somewhere else. Was that kind of putting it in there? Was it kind of intentional in your editing, or could you talk a little bit about the character of the cell phone in your film?
No, thank you for the question. No, that wasn't. I don't think that was intentional. That was only noticed that in editing. That while we were having a family reunion, but people seemed, as you said, to be elsewhere. There's just too many screens on the table as well. So, but I think I was trying to speak about how cell phones, TikTok, or all the social medias are so present in everyday life. So I kind of wanted to emphasize on that. Um, and we're just not present. So that's part of it. And also, I don't know if you notice, they while we were eating with the family, and my aunt was having a little phone on the table as well while we were eating, while we were talking. So those little things, I hope people notice, but like it's not on the main screen, but if people notice, people will get it. So and thank you for noticing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, then I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for staying up and getting up and all those kind of things in your real worlds and being virtual with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.